want to be. I'm Michelle Kokolas with the Environmental Finance Center at the University of Maryland, and with Carol Barth this evening from the county, we'll be facilitating this conversation around expanding county waste reduction and diversion efforts. So you are here to talk about compost and waste and things of that nature. If you don't want to talk about that, you are in the wrong place. Carol, go ahead and go to the first slide, the next slide. So this slide just gives a very brief overview of the efforts that are currently going on in the county, going on in the county. So there is a curbside food scraps collection program that was piloted. The county has a contract with Maryland Environmental Services to operate a large-scale composting facility in Upper Marlboro. And then there are a half dozen or so county municipalities that are leading organic waste composting programs on their own, including backyard composting and curbside pickup. So that's just a really quick snapshot to give you an idea of some things that are happening. Carol, go to the next slide, please. So these are the things that we are here to talk about this evening. It's going to be the same structure as the last ones. We're going to talk about hurdles. We're going to talk about what's needed, and then we're going to talk about what you need to see in the next 3 to 5 years to say we're really making progress on these things. So the blueprint is to continue to work toward a vision of zero waste by prioritizing the strategic expansion of the county's waste reduction and diversion efforts in tandem with community-wide education to promote waste reduction and reuse. And you can see there are 6 steps in this blueprint. Conducting a feasibility study, administering a county survey, rolling out the countywide curbside composting program. I have a feeling a lot of people are going to have thoughts about that one in particular. Providing safe disposal of legacy hazardous waste materials, including enabling residents to properly dispose of hazardous waste. Expanding and promoting the community-wide recycling and waste diversion programs, and then building partnerships to help with all of this. So why don't we move ahead to the next slide, which is hurdles. In your minds, what hurdles need to be cleared in order to achieve success for this goal, to work toward this vision of zero waste, including composting and hazardous waste disposal? What do you see as the hurdles that are in the way? And again, this can be small scale, you as individuals, what hurdles are there? Larger scale hurdles the county in general needs to overcome. Anything you want to talk about, and also remember that these are just guides to help the conversation along. We really are here to hear what you have to say. John, feel free, unmute yourself. Also, please put things in the chat.
So this is Jane. I'm on the same thing. Anyway, okay. I think the biggest thing is convenience. I think that is, cost is also a factor, but I think convenience is, plastic is so much more convenient for people, and we need to make it more convenient to be green.
And I'd like to add to that we need more land availability where we can do smaller scale composting operations than what we have in Upper Marlboro, so that we can be closer, have them community located.
Were you in the last session that Carol and I had?
No, we were in vehicles.
Okay, someone in that session mentioned at the beginning of everything in the larger group sessions, there was a conversation about vacant lots, and somebody had mentioned the possibility of using vacant lots for some of these facilities like you are talking about. And when you say convenience, can you expand upon that a little bit? Like, I get you were saying plastic is simpler for people, and so do you mean convenience in the sense of what do we need to make it more convenient for people to use things that aren't plastic, or does that include like bottle recycling, or like, I'm just curious what exactly you were thinking there.
Probably, I don't know, just a
Everything.
broad range. I think like people don't bother to get educated, and that's part of it, and that's partly well, sort of laziness, but and the fact that it's easier to it is easier to not recycle if not recycle, but not reuse things. It's easier to just throw things away than to wash them. And I think a whole lot of people just think, if you have a picnic or something, we'll just have throwaways. And I mean, I think that's true in so many instances that people are thinking about what's the easiest way to do it. Going shopping, it's people are not thinking so much of bringing reusable bags because that isn't as convenient as just getting a plastic bag that you throw away and you don't worry about what happens to it afterwards. You just throw it away. Whereas if you take your cloth bag home, you have to wash it and just I mean, to me, it's not convenient to be, my conscience would bother me too much. So I don't think that that it would be convenient for me, but I think for most people, they just, too many people, I think it's just too easy not to be careful.
And here in Greenbelt, we do not have curbside compost pickup. We compost, Jane composts in her bin at the house here. I vermicompost in my bins at the house here. But for the containers that will break down, we take it to Public Works, which now got a compost crew pickup, but we still have to take it to Public Works because we don't have curbside pickup for that. So even for us and for something like that, it's not as convenient as it could be. Thank you.
Okay. John, I see your hand up. Other John, sorry. Other John. John Kanga.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to follow along with the previous remarks and saying that one of the hardest things may be just convincing people to participate in these things. I just in what I see on social media like Nextdoor, I see people complaining about, having to sort their recyclables, and, we don't have to do that in PG, but even so, they have to be clean, and a lot of people are, just lazy about it, and they just don't want to do it. And I don't know, I'm not sure what's the best way to convince people that it's, it's really not that bad, and that for any program like this to be successful, it does require some effort on the part of residents. And once you get in the habit of it, it's not hard at all. And that could go for composting too. But the curbside composting is a great idea, but I'm not sure how what the best way to implement that is. I'm really encouraged to see that the county is starting to pursue that, and I hope it works out. I hope people participate and it continues.
Let me ask a question about both of those comments. Is that the county has been looking at the possibility of reverse vending machines. So this is where you take your soda or whatever, and you put that bottle into the machine, and you get like a little coupon or something back out. Does that sound like something that would be?
Well, maybe a deposit fee, maybe something like that could work. I mean, some states do that. And I was out in Oregon a couple of years ago, and, people were picking these things up off the ground because they can get money for them, picking up bottles and cans. Well, cans, I don't think they get money for bottles, but anyway, maybe a deposit fee if, I don't know if that would work here or not, but something to consider.
I think that that's great. There's also a comment in the chat about needing incentives for people, and to what you were saying, that the hurdle is just our culture being, we're a throwaway consumption oriented culture. So it's really about changing the mindset of how we view things.
It is.
Mike, oh, go ahead.
You know, it's been we've been that way for decades now, and so there are a lot of people that have never known anything else, and you know, I have to convince them that there is a better way.
Thank you. Mike, I see your hand up next. We got a lot of hands up, so I'm trying to work my way through them.
Thank you. So we know that there are hurdles that are related to our culture, convenience, etc. What we need to do is to provide incentives that counter those culture that's there now. So things like a ban on plastic bags would force people into both using their own cloth bags, but it also might incentivize people to think about why these bags are gone. We used something like 2 billion plastic bags in Maryland a couple of years ago, and only 5 to 7% of them were actually recycled. So the stores sort of greenwash whenever they put the bins out front that say we recycle the plastic bags that we give away. And the fact of the matter is very few people actually bring their bags back. But the store gets to say that they're helping with recycling. The other thing is instituting a bottle fee, which was mentioned by John a moment ago. This has proven to be highly effective in a lot of states and localities that have used them. There's also a really innovative approach that's been taken by the state of Maine and is common in Europe, which is that the producers have to take back anything that's left over. And it goes from your refrigerator to your can of paint and so on. So if you buy a refrigerator at Home Depot, say, then whenever you buy a new refrigerator, they have to take it back. They have to take the old one back. The same thing would be, you use a can of paint, you only use half of it. You don't know what to do with the rest of it. The county, you can take to the county landfill where they have a proper program set up. But what you really should be able to do is bring it back to the hardware store where you bought it. This kind of program, like I said, is just getting off the ground in Maine. It is not uncommon at all in Europe. And it's something that if we're serious about changing our culture and changing the approaches that are out there, this is something that we should be doing for if Prince George's County wants to be a leader on climate.
And I think that that's a really interesting concept. Thank you. Becky, you're next.
I think this relates to everything that's already been said, but it's like convincing people. It's more as far as a hurdle, just the education around waste reduction and the benefits and how one would do it. I'm in Upper Marlboro, but I don't even know about composting until joining this, as far as where would I take composting. I would love curbside composting, but like right now, since that's not available, and I know this isn't a part of this presentation, but like if at the end of it, someone could let me know how I could take composting somewhere, that would be great. But like this just shows, I think, how there's, unless like if I hadn't looked at my email and been invited to this program, I wouldn't even know about these options.
Okay. Carol, I'm assuming that you can provide her some information at the end about composting within the county.
Yeah, and what I can also do is put in a contact to find out about, you know, more details on the plans for rolling out the curbside. So I will do that.
I see one more hand up, which is Amy. So I want to hear your comment. There are lots of great comments in the chat as well, but and we will capture all of those. But I do want to get the last person who had raised their hand, and then we're going to move to the next question because we only have 10 minutes left. Amy.
Yeah, the biggest obstacle, the biggest hurdle is that there's no market for recyclables except for glass. And even that doesn't really have much of a market. And that's, I don't know how we face that. It's got to be larger scale than counties. And whether that can be done by legislation or not. For a while, recyclers were starting to really make some progress, but then they didn't have markets enough for what they managed to sort. And the other problem is contamination in what is put into the trash nominally for recyclables, which is material that cannot possibly be recycled. And so it probably winds up in the landfill.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, Carol, if you go to the next slide, please.
Yep.
So thinking about all of these things, what tools and resources and technical assistance or incentives would you like to see, or do you need to see to help change the behavior and the culture? It's a big task. What would help? I think certainly based off of Becky's comments, I would say more education and information out there. Becky, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking of, as far as changing the culture, that, you know, if it's brought into the schools and the young kids are basically educating their parents, like I just think the younger that we start trying to shift that culture, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also thinking that in like grocery stores, like places where people frequent, if there were people there on a regular basis that were not necessarily approaching people, but had some type of display and were showing people how they could compost in their home. So, I mean, it's just kind of using those venues as educational fronts as well. I don't know if there'd be a way to make it so that someone could have someone come into their home if they really want to get involved, but they're not sure how. I know that'd probably be more expensive, but I don't know if there's a way also to do some type of reward program where the more that you compost or do certain behaviors, that somehow you get some reward through.
Oh yeah, like you do with solar, right? You're essentially buying back into the grid. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, or even that you get discounts on your groceries for composting. I mean, like you just get credits that, you know, food credits, so to speak. I mean, I'm sure even with low income that maybe they get I forget what the EBT card, or, you know, they get more SNAP, like they actually get more money if they're composting more.
Right.
So it's kind of taking some of the concepts that are used, but applying it in different ways.
Good thoughts. looking in the chat, I see a lot of comments about incentives. We need incentives, we need fees, we need education, we need programming. We need bottle fees and plastic bag bans. I hope both of those things come up in the next slide as well. Lots of comments about education. Oh, Carol, can you flip back for a second?
Sure.
I was saying, I hope they come up on the next slide. I wasn't quite ready to go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. We need to go momentarily, but are there any other thoughts on this slide, tools and resources and technical assistance that are needed?
I'm trying to extend something that I heard, so tell me if I went wrong, but the comment about not having markets for the recyclables.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's a comment in the chat about that as well, that there's more of a demand for metal than glass at this point in time. Lots of comments about educating students, getting to the students first, because the students take things back home to their parents, which I think is the case with all of these things we're talking about, right? Like students, kids are the way to go. Another comment about cradle to grave producer responsibility requirements.
And everybody just keep your eye out for our new mascot, Spencer, and his new adventure books, Spencer the Sprout, and all different ages, how he learns, to recycle and to not have waste and other topics. So that's something that's coming out in that education category.
There's also a comment in the chat about the pandemic made bag use worse because cashiers were not told to touch reusable bags. I definitely experienced that as a reusable bag person. I did a lot of bagging my own groceries. I agree with that comment.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're done typing there, let's go to the next slide and talk about thinking about all the things we've discussed. What do you need to see happen in the next 3 to 5 years in order for you to sit back and say, the county's really making progress and they're really serious about this? What do you need to see? Becky, is that a new hand or the same hand? You're muted.
I didn't do the hand on purpose, but actually something did come into my mind. Maybe a score, like a scoreboard, so to speak, so that the goals are clear in different parts of the community and people can see how we're doing, because individuals are a part of that too, and maybe it's broken down by businesses, individuals. Mm-hmm. But it just makes it creates kind of a game to do well and also gives accountability.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. People like visualization. Thanks. Lori.
Yeah, a group of my friends have been working on an idea. And sorry, I'm hearing myself through someone. There we go. There's a little booklet. This isn't specifically for just waste, but it's called the Low Carbon Diet, where either a group of neighbors or church people or people at the same library, they go through a little booklet together that has many of the suggestions of things that people can do. And they either work on their own or they work with a facilitator over a series of weeks. And so they learn about different things that it can do, but also it's like the peer pressure of, oh, did you start, bringing your bag to the grocery store or whatever. And some of the programs also do have dashboards where you can go online and you can log what you've done. Though those are often less popular. People don't really want to go online and, report what they're doing. But so starting, it's called Cool Block. It used to be called low carbon diet. And it just what Becky said kind of inspired me, that people just don't know the information, and it's, you don't just want to get a bunch of pieces of paper, you know, handed to you, but to work with a group of people. During the pandemic, it would have to be by a Zoom, but to work with a group of neighbors or people at your school or whatever, to all see if you can or work through a list of personal changes that you could make in your household.
I think that's a great idea. Thank you. Martha.
Hi. I'd like to see I mentioned this at the last meeting. I'd like to see a timetable between now and 2030, whereby the county will expand food scrap composting access to, first of all, extended to the entire county for residential areas that are already serviced by county services by, say, 2024. We haven't had a timetable from DOE. They're only telling us that there are 3,000 more this year. At 3,000 per year, it'll be decades before we get to the target. We need to have an expansion in unincorporated areas that do not have access to county services now in terms of drop-offs, more drop-off places. We want to get access of multifamily units. Also by 2024, 2025 to curbside access. Anyway, you can go down why we want to get municipalities to adopt that are not covered by county services to expand access, universal access to food scrap composting. And this would lead up to, in 2030, banning food waste from the landfill. In other words, what starts out as access and voluntary participation gradually evolves over these years to a ban from the landfill. On top of that, we need to ban plastic carryout bags. We need to reduce the use of single-use plastic implements like condiment packets and utensils and straws and so, well, plastic straws are already banned in the county, better for enforcement of that. But all of those things that come with your meal on request only. And we need legislation to create incentives for reuse and refillables instead of single use.
Thank you. I
have
also
a longer list, but I'll let someone else say something.
feel free to put them in the chat. I also see several things in the chat related to a bottle bill needs to be adopted within the next 3 to 5 years. I would argue sooner than that. A zero waste initiative needs to be adopted by the county. A plastic bag ban needs to be adopted by the county. So all of those things in the chat as well. Also, better enforcement of the recycling rule that requires apartments and businesses to recycle. Oh, I like this one. Education materials prominently posted at all locations where bottled water is sold. I think that's a great idea. Enforcement of the rules. We have a styrofoam ban, but I keep finding restaurants in the county that still use carryout styrofoam. 100% better enforcement of the bans and legislation that are already in place. Looks like we have about 2 minutes left and then they're going to whisk us away. So any last thoughts on what you need to see in the next 3 to 5 years? I think that these are some pretty well laid out things you want to see. And I think the idea of more transparency and a timetable is really important. Carol, if you want to go to the next slide. So I'm sure you've seen this already, but if you want to stay engaged, if you're already not engaged, just here's some different ways that you can do that. You can apply to be a county climate action resident expert, visit the Climate Partners website. There's a link about learning more about more meetings, the CAP virtual open house, and then providing comments and feedback. I do want to reiterate that the county really wants to hear your thoughts and have your input on this process, and encourage your neighbors to do the same. I see some links getting posted in the chat. And
I
the
love
thing
that point of sale idea. That was awesome.
yeah, there's some really good ideas in the chat that we didn't have time to talk about, but they will all be captured. And yes, again, the PowerPoints will be made available after everything is done. The main PowerPoint, as well as I believe these and a summary of these breakout, all the breakout sessions will be available. Well, thank you all for sharing your time and your thoughts. It looks like we are wrapping up now.
Ask questions.